All right, so let's take a look at our next learning section here, where we're not doing an example, we're kind of learning something new. So we are going to take a look at something called factoring perfect squares. So a perfect square is just some number times itself. So like 25 would be a perfect square, it's 5 times 5. 100 would be a perfect square, 10 times 10. But if we're doing variables, we can also have perfect squares that are written different ways. So for example, if we look over here, a plus b squared, that quantity, a plus b squared, gives us a perfect square, just some amount squared. Now, what do we get when we do a plus b squared? Well, let me write it out in my favorite way to do these, a box diagram. We could also FOIL things, do the first, outer, inner, last process if you're comfortable with that. Instead, feel free to write that down on your own paper, but I'm going to go with this. Okay, so we have a plus b multiplied by a plus b. Well, what do we get in each box? In this box, we get a squared. Sorry, handwriting's deteriorating throughout these videos, it looks like. We get ab, we get another ab, and we get b squared. So what does that look like when we simplify? Well, the only like terms would be these two ab's, so we will write that as 2ab right there. Okay, so we have our 4 terms, but 2 of them simplify down, and we get 3 terms. Well, what do we call a 3-term polynomial? Well, what do you call a 3-wheeled bicycle? You call it a tricycle. TRI stands for 3. So we have a perfect square trinomial, a polynomial with 3 numbers. All right, if instead of a plus b, we have a minus b, let's see if we can just adjust this really quick. Let's do, instead of a plus b, let's change that to a minus b. Well, the main difference is here is that these corner boxes would be negative. How about this bottom right box? What do we get when we do negative b times negative b? Well, just like any 2 negative numbers being multiplied gives us a positive number, negative b times negative b will give us a positive b squared. Okay, so the b squared part doesn't change. The only part that really changed was that 2ab became a negative 2ab. Okay. Now moving down the page, let's just read this last part. For a trinomial to be factorable as a perfect square. So they're basically talking about not going forward through this process, but recognizing that you have a trinomial that could be factored into a perfect square. Okay. Following must be true. The first term is a perfect square, a squared, yes. The last term is a perfect square, b squared, yes. The middle term is 2 times the product of the square roots of the first and last terms. Okay, so what are the square roots of a squared and b squared? Well, that is just a and b. So the middle term indeed is 2 times the product of those 2 square roots together. Okay.